everybody, and welcome to another episode of Healthy AF. My name is Amy Chang, and I'm a health coach here with Healthy Life, Health and Wellness Coaching. It is Motivation March, and today the topic is external motivation. I am not a huge fan of external motivation. It's a fun fact. I live in an internal motivation world. I get super defiant when somebody gives me a prize at the end of completion. So I am likely to say, I don't need your prize. However, external motivation can be super handy if that's your thing. So when we talk about external motivation, basically what we're talking about is you're motivated or connected to what you'll get when you reach a certain goal. And that prize is typically something that someone else is in charge of. Let's just throw out some super relatable examples. So we have the summer reading programs at school where you write down how many books you read, and the class that reads the most books gets the pizza party. Totally an external motivator. Report card cash. You get straight A's, your mom and daddy are going to give you $50 per A. Totally external. Sales and bonuses. If you have a job in sales and you reach a certain level and you get those bonuses, those are all external motivators. Now, why don't I love external motivators? Because they are more variable than internal motivators. We talked last week about internal motivators as deeply connected to who you are. They can be challenging to work with because if you're not deeply connected with who you are, you may not understand what is motivating you. Which means if you have your internal motivator and all of a sudden your life gets real busy and you're not paying attention to actually who you are for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your community, you may become disconnected from that motivator. It's a very fluffy motivator. It's important to set tangible reminders of internal motivators. External motivators are usually more tangible. So you're going to get something that you can touch, see, feel. Someone else is going to be giving it to you. So it's easier sometimes to keep those external motivators in your sight, especially when things get busy. However, they're less sustainable. And this is where I want you to just jump in and follow me here. If you have a prize at the end of your sales, let's just use the sales example. If you reach 100 sales, and the prize last year was like a yacht and you love boats, then you're probably really motivated. But when the prize this year turns out to be like a pizza and a foot rub, then you might decide actually, I'd do it for the yacht, but I ain't doing it for no pizza and a foot rub. External motivators are dependent on how we value whatever the prize is. Well, the prize changes because typically someone outside ourselves is giving us the prize. We don't get to decide that. And then there's this one. They might not give it to you. That's a real external motivator challenge when the person giving you the prize, actually, we're not doing the prize this year. Okay, well, do you go on selling the way you always have? How does that affect your behavior? Where you can see in contrast that internal motivation is sort of steady. It's stable. It's based on your values that don't really change all that much. So when we look at external motivators, they can really shift depending on, do we actually get the prize? Do we want it anymore? Do we value it? I was just thinking before this podcast, everybody wants a $30 steak, but nobody wants a $30 steak that we've paid $150 for. It's just too much for the prize that's guaranteed and maybe even not guaranteed. I did have a client, and I want to share this story because as iffy as I feel external motivators are, they do have a place. What I like to do is make your own prize. So I had a client a couple of years ago who was very externally motivated. And if you know you're externally motivated, then this is a great tool for you. How do you know you're externally motivated? Because when someone says to you, I bet you can't, blah, 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 you are all in, ready to, take your earrings off and throw down. Or if there's a challenge at work, or if you feel really competitive in nature, probably externally motivated. So if you know you are this way, work it to your advantage. Make your own prize. So I had a client who, at the end of her goal session where she completed her goals, she gave herself a trip. And that worked beautifully for her. You just have to be mindful of how much do you value it. So don't be giving yourself something that you don't really want to put the work in for. Again, think about that steak. You've got to value that prize, and your value can shift on that prize. It might become not worth it to you. The other thing that I've seen clients do that's really cool is to have another person in on the prize giving. So if you have a person in your life that you trust and knows you well, might be a best friend, might be a spouse, might be a kid even, or mom or dad, you can put the prize in their hands and let it be a surprise. So, hey, once I get to this goal, I'd love it if you would surprise me with something, and I'm going to let you know, like, here's the budget, or here's the, whatever qualifiers you want to put on that. I want it to be a trip, or I want it to be a meal, or I want it to be, whatever it is, a piece of clothing. So you can work that, but that puts you in control of your prize, which takes a little bit of the insustainability out of depending on an external prize that is controlled by another person, a third person, takes that out of there. Okay, so external motivation busters. Your goal is too big or takes too long and it's out of reach. So this is where we lose value. You have set this goal that's a monster goal, and you think you want to get it, and there's a good prize at the end, but maybe the good prize isn't worth the long, big, massive amount of work and energy and shifting that you're going to have to put in. When you find yourself losing that motivation, start making it smaller goals. Start adding in little pieces of that great big prize. Maybe if you're going for a 20-pound weight loss, once you hit your 5-pound weight loss, you can call a travel agent to set it up. And then once you hit 7.5, you can buy those flip-flops for the beach. And when you see how that works, give yourself some tiny bits of motivation along the way that gets you to that bigger prize. Increase that value for yourself. The other one I wanted to bring up, I had a conversation with a friend recently, and we were talking about competitive nature. Okay. We can use our competitive natures as external motivators, and you could argue it's an internal motivator, but if you're going to compete with somebody, there's always someone that you're beating, unless you're beating yourself. And we're not going to have that conversation today. I'm talking about competition with other people. When you use competition with other people as an external motivator, again, because you're engaging with an outside person that you can't control, there are all kinds of ways that you could lose motivation. There's just too much in there that becomes unclear. But the biggest problem I see that comes back and bites us in the fanny bottom when we try to use a possibly overgrown competitive spirit in the name of external motivation is that when we use that specific tool called I'm going to beat you or die trying, we bring along with that tool several things that we maybe didn't want, like isolating other people, anger, reactionary behavior, and things that actually don't serve us. And those are real motivation busters, because what we want to do is typically be connected and in community with people. And when our competition comes out so fiercely that we inadvertently disconnect, we win the prize, but it might not feel real good anymore. That's a real great way to tank your motivation. So I would steer clear from, letting that competitive spirit get out of hand. We can tap into it a little bit, but keep that sucker in check. That's all I've got for you on this episode of Healthy AF. Next episode, we're going to dive deeper into motivation. And by the time April comes around, you're going to be like, who needs motivation? I've got tanks of it at home. Give yourself some grace and have a great day. I'll see y'all next time on Healthy AF.